Pulse of the Paddock, a health check for Northern Australia. Please welcome the various panellists who will be joining us. Mandy Smallcombe from the Royal Flying Doctor Service, Marty Doyle from the Northern Australian Pastoral Company, Ewan Weil from Heart of Australia, your President, Henry Burke from the Consolidated Pastoral Company, Sue Stafford, and the facilitator for this session is your brand newly minted NTCA CEO, Romy Carey. Please make them all welcome.
Thank you, Pete. We're having some technical difficulties because I'm missing some panellists. So, lucky I've got something to fill the time for you all. Catherine School of the Air is doing a fundraiser. They've got this great little cookbook sitting out in the ICPA stand. So if you haven't got your hot little hands on one of these yet, make sure that you get out there and see the guys on the ICPA stand. Thank goodness you're here, Marty and Sue. We're just waiting for Mandy and for Ewan, and then we'll kick off, but have a seat. Yeah, we do. We might kick off and then when Mandy gets here, she can join us. So for everybody in the crowd, hi, come up. You can come and squeeze in near me. I just wanted to start with a very quick question. And that question is, when was the last time that you checked in on your own health like you would for your station vehicles, for your boars, or for your cattle? And it's a rhetorical question. I don't expect any hands up. But something to ponder while we're here having a chat. It is amazing to be here. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about, and something that I'm stoked that we've managed to weave into our conference format. And I'm sure you'll all join me today in enjoying this. As cattle producers, we certainly put everything into our land and our livestock and the work that we do every single day. But as we wouldn't push our Toyotas beyond their maintenance schedules and expect them to keep running, we can't do that to ourselves. Now, there's long hours, the physical demands, the relentless pace that our industry operate in. All of these things make it so easy for us to put our health on the back burner. But if we're not in good shape, neither are our businesses. And I think that's a really important take-home message for us. And that is exactly why we've established our primary healthcare service network here at conference. I know that I've rambled on about it at our branch meetings a few times this year, and that I told everyone you wouldn't get beers at the welcome drinks if you didn't get your card stamped, but it's so very important. So we might just dive on into it, and Ewan, I'm going to kick down to you first. Can you share some stats for us just to paint a bit of a picture on heart health and chronic illness in the rural area?
What I might, thank you very much. What I might just kind of start with is a couple of quick observations, and it's that people living in rural remote communities, they actually access GP services at half the rate of those of metropolitan centres. They also access specialist services when they have something more significant at a third of the rate. So in terms of the healthcare that's getting delivered, we know it's really, really minimal. It's happening later. We know that people in rural remote communities are putting up with their symptoms longer before they present. And unfortunately, that kind of also leads into, we see people present to for care, either with emergency evacuation or as a critical presentation at a hospital emergency. Now, kind of coming back to the Toyota analogy and looking after your car, we know that nipping things in the bud and treating them earlier across all medicine means that we can have much better long-term outcomes, that the car lasts for several 100,000 kilometres more and works well, rather than having to keep that car running on its last legs and not really getting the job done.
Absolutely. We've all patched up a Toyota in our time, I'm sure. And they're pretty stark numbers accessing healthcare, at 50% less than our urban counterparts. Now I'm going to hand Sue and Marty to both of you. Do these challenges, I guess, does the figure surprise you? Is this something that resonates with you?
It doesn't surprise me, no. But I think a lot of us perceive distance, just getting appointments, having to travel, the expense is always a big deterrent to going away, and usually it's not until you really have to that you find out that you can actually do it.
Absolutely. And I think, everybody in this room knows that, a quick trip to the doctors is never just a quick trip to the doctors. The reality is it could be, a couple of nights in town, for a half an hour slot.
Yeah, exactly. And I do have to say that thank God for the RFDS and their proactive approach to medical treatment, that both my husband and I have successfully lived to where we are now.
Yeah, we love the RFDS. Do you want to add any comments yet, Marty? Oh.
Not really. I guess blokes in general aren't that proactive on this sort of stuff, so they normally wait till they have an event to do anything about it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get there and ask about a story from you. But Mandy, as a healthcare provider, how do you and your team try and help overcome some of these barriers to access for primary healthcare?
So I'm based in Port Augusta in South Australia, and so my primary healthcare team, we fly out to all the remote Bronco brandings, gymkhanas, races in Outback SA. We do 14 of those a year. So we're there with our nursing team, some of our doctors as first responders, but while we're there, we're always doing health promotion and screening. So much like we're doing today, cardiac health in the foyer there, it literally takes 5 minutes. The hardest thing was putting in your email address. But after getting a blood pressure, a BMI, a pulse, and just some really quick risk factor questions, we can really quickly come to the conclusion whether someone is at low risk, moderate risk or high risk of developing a cardiac or a stroke event in the next 5 years. So that's what we're about. We're about taking the pit stop screening to the Outback. We use the whole Toyota story as well, and it is aimed at blokes because Ewan had some great stats there, but in the Territory, men are 40% more likely to be admitted to a hospital with a cardiac-related disease, and men are 40% more likely to drop dead from a cardiac-related illness. So in the Territory, it is a younger population, but the incidence of cardiac disease is the worst in Australia.
Absolutely, and I think everybody in this room knows somebody or has been touched by one of these incidents. I just want to stick with you for a second, Mandy, and talk about the work we did on our Northern Territory needs analysis. Are there any figures in there that you can talk to around the role of early detection and how that plays out in assisting with these preventative actions that we can take?
Yeah, so certainly, so going back a couple of years, we did do a consumer needs analysis based here in the Territory from Central Australia, Barkly in the VRD region. And the overwhelming facts that came back was time and distance. So people were saying, men in particular, were saying that they just don't prioritise their health. They don't have the time to go, to drive 200 k's, 600 k's or whatever to go to the closest clinic or doctor. And it's really that simple. So, and then everyone had a story to tell, either someone on their station. There was not one response that come back that no one had been touched by any sort of heart disease on their station, whether it was someone dropping dead without having an AED, or someone having angina and, pastoralists having to care for people while waiting 2, 4, 6 hours for RFDS or care flight, or, for someone to come.
Yeah, and they would be immensely frightening times. So you've come a fair way for us today to be on this panel, and I know that you're very passionate about this topic. Can you share with us some details around what drives this passion?
So I was 39 and I just had one random, what I thought was a cramp in my chest, and it went away. So my husband said, should you call the doctors? Like, it was middle of the night, so no. But I said, I'll give him a call tomorrow, which I did. And fortunately, the RFDS doctor in Mount Isa, Dr. Bowley, a lot of you'll know, told me in no uncertain terms I had to go to town, which I was reluctant to do. I had children I was getting ready to send back to school, organising kitchens, whatever. But he was very insistent, and fortunately he was, because within a couple of weeks I was in Brisbane being stented. So, but I think statistics for women on stations can be a lot lower too, because traditionally women's hearts are protected by oestrogen, I found out, so we don't normally have the problems earlier that men do, but there are, like myself, I have a genetic condition that caused it, so, but I think you have to learn to listen to your body too. I didn't fit any of the, none of the pain radiating up your jaw or tingling fingers, nothing at all like that. But it was a good cramp, and I thought, oh, maybe. But then, yeah, following that, about 6 weeks later, I was still feeling very tired. Back on the station, thought, everyone goes, oh, you get a stent, you get all this energy back, wahoo, let's go. But I found I was getting tighter and tighter, and in the end I'd get up and get my daughter off to the schoolroom and fall asleep on the couch by 9 o'clock. So rang my trusty RFDS doctor back again, who spoke to my cardiologist, and by the end of that week I was back in Brisbane needing a double bypass. So yeah, you just got to learn to listen to your body and not ignore it.
Yeah, that's critical, isn't it? And I think what spurred me to have this panel is the stories that are not, this isn't just one story. There's many, many in our membership, and I think we sometimes push pedal to the metal and we don't listen. So, Marty, can you share a few words as well around, why you're sitting on this stage and why you were happy to get up here?
Yeah, sort of similar situation to Susan, but it's 10 o'clock one night. I broke a sweat. My arms went a bit heavy. I just felt a bit crook. And my wife, Dan, was asleep. I didn't want to bother her, so got up and Googled symptoms of a heart attack. And I thought, there's a couple there. And then so I thought, I was a bit restless, so I did a bit of office work and that. And then I thought, I'll go back to bed, and if I'm alive in the morning, I'll tell Dan. Anyway, I got up in the morning, felt fine. Just said to Dan on the way past, I didn't sleep that well last night. Then I went and trucked 18 decks, came back, and then same deal, was just walking along. Arms went a bit heavy, broke a sweat again, and felt a bit crook. And then, I thought I'd better do something then, so rang the RFDS. Sprayed some of that stuff under my tongue and all that, and then when they came I was right again. And it's funny, it just sort of comes and goes, and it doesn't, when you hear the word heart attack, it sounds like, you're copping a real flogging, but it's pretty subtle, and if you didn't, until you have one, you don't, or until someone tells you you've had one, you don't really know what's going on. So, yeah, and even when they sprayed that stuff under my tongue, carried my bag on my shoulder up into the plane, and they said, oh, we better take that off you, and then shoved me in there, hooked me up to the ECG, and they said, oh, you're in a spot of bother. That's when it all got serious, but yeah, up until then it sort of felt like it was nothing. So flew across to Townsville, and then so I had a 95% blockage in one. Went back a month later for another thing, and I had another 2 blockages, so I got 3 stents in there. But if I look back, as what Sue was saying, there were signs there that I either ignored or chose to ignore a bit. And one of them was probably just, getting a bit unusually tired and not really realising why and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I guess it doesn't present itself as chest pain all the time, and it certainly didn't in my case. But, just going to bed and seeing what's happening in the morning is like pressing the snooze button on your smoke alarm. Really, it's probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but anyway, turned out all right in the end.
That's probably a great description for the end. Do you think, Marty, that this has changed the way that you approach healthcare and your routine checkups? Are you a model citizen now, and have you visited all of the primary healthcare booths that I have in the hall for you?
I'd like
No,
to
it's
say
a yes.
I'd
Yeah.
like to
All right,
say
over to
yes.
you, Sue. No. Well, why do you think that is, Marty?
He's a
Why do you think our men are slack at getting this stuff checked out?
I think just because we get a bit busy and we always put it on the back burner. And I don't know, I guess men think too, once they've gone and just had a procedure done, that it's done, It's like a vasectomy. You just go there and then she's all over. But
I didn't think we'd get here.
it's a long way from the heart, isn't it?
It is. It is.
I guess we think we just go in and get fixed up and we forget, you
It was new
get
then.
busy again and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ewan, is there anything that you've heard today or anything that you want to highlight, I guess, from your perspective?
No, these are quite common stories, quite common experiences that we've seen with our patients at Heart of Australia. We've seen across Queensland over 18,000 patients, and we've had about 850, 900 people that are very lucky to be here that we've been able to kind of send off for significant surgeries and things. And I think a couple of stories here that kind of really relate with, resonate is there's actually some luck involved here, and that there's been some warning bells, and that they've listened to the warning bells eventually. I know there's a bit of a delay in taking action, but for a lot of people with heart disease, we don't get these warning bells, and the first warning bell is a catastrophic event. And this kind of comes back to that, actually getting ahead of this, keeping in touch with the doctor and getting the regular health checks and understanding your risk profile, doing what you can. I think everyone in here knows and doesn't need to be explained that smoking's not a great idea. You should eat healthy, you should exercise, you should get proper rest and do all these lifestyle things. But for some people, they can do all of those things perfectly, and heart disease is still going to come because of genetics and age and other things. And that's why it is really critical to engage with healthcare. Our kind of role in this is really to come in when something has been identified that needs investigation, and we bring the specialists out to community. We bring all the toolbox so they can get the answers that, yeah, this is something with your heart and it needs to be actioned. But I think that's one of the kind of, for me, the things that's resonating is we don't all get warning bells, and you're both very lucky to kind of act on those and get them sorted.
Absolutely. And Mandy, I just want to ask, can you explain to us, when we have one of these events on property and we potentially haven't done our mitigation, so to speak, as an emergency medevac provider, how much harder does that make your job?
Great question, and I've been prepared for this question. So, because I've got 4 things that I really, really, really want to drive home today, and one is do not delay. So every second, every minute counts, especially when we're talking about heart, lack of oxygen, cramping. That is the body telling you that your heart or your head or your organs are not getting the oxygen that they need, and they're screaming at you. So get on the phone. There's 24/7 RFDS doctors on call 24/7. That's the first thing. The second thing is your medical kits, whether you've got an RFDS med chest or you've got a territory medical kit. Please have that restocked, because as Marty said, there is life-saving meds in there, so aspirin, GTN spray, and some other pain medications and cardiac medications that are in there. If they're expired, guess what? We can still use them, but they may not work as well. If you don't have them in your chest because they've gone missing or the dog ate them or whatever, well, then you're in an absolute world of pain, and that life-saving help that we can give your heart while we're trying to prepare a plane to get diverted to come to your station is going to be longer. The other thing is your airstrips. Please make sure that your airstrips are, regularly graded, they're maintained, because there's nothing, more stressful that if we come to land at your place in the middle of the night. And, we had an instance last week, and, they've tried to do a night landing and all the lanterns weren't working, and the poor lass, was trying to Google how do I do the dunny roll, the diesel lanterns and whatever. So if you haven't come to see me, the last couple of days, I've actually got the airstrip lighting pamphlets on our desk at the RFDS stall. But just making sure that your strips are graded, every 3 to 6 months as well, because if we land and, pop a tyre or go off the shoulder and get bogged, doesn't happen regularly, but when it happens, it's always in an emergency situation, and it's just another stressor. So, if people can just do their things to keep up to date, and everyone's busy, but, if you do have an RFDS medical chest, we're always on the end of the line to help you guys keep it maintained and restocked. And the last thing is an AED. It's $2,000. The battery lasts for 4 years. It is the greatest investment that a business owner, a manager can offer their staff. Because again, if they're driving around and it does happen and someone's collapsed in a car and they get on the phone to RFDS, the first thing we're going to say is, have you got an AED? Because we know you're not nurses, we know you're not doctors.
Mandy, what is that?
A defib, an automatic defib. You can get them online. Again, come and see me. Today I've given quite a few managers brands of ones that we use and we recommend. So lots of our pastoralists in Outback SA have the Cardiac Science and the Zoll AEDs. And they're not scary. You put the pads on and they speak to you. Stay calm, and it's not going to go off and zap anyone, without them being zapped. It's all in your control. And again, the doctor's on the end of the phone 24/7 there to talk you through it. So I think, there's 4 or 5 things that we talk about, being prepared in the event of an emergency. If those 4 or 5 things are at the top of your list, in your already really busy days, I think it just makes an emergency situation that little less stressful.
Absolutely, preparation is key. We're drawing to a close for our session, but I think I really want to thank Marty and Sue for getting up here and sharing your stories. It's not easy to do, but also to Heart Health and you at RFDS for being here to provide these services to our members. It's new to the program, but it's so important, and we really appreciate your time and your willingness to engage. So can I get a round of applause for our panel, please? Thank you very much.